All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays. Yeah.
Hello. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Loose Lugs, presented by ASAP, the All Sports, All Plays Network. We have another all-star lineup, as usual. Porter Hayes, Hog Talk, Arkansas, everything, you name it. And we've got Tony Hollinsworth, who produces, and it does everything for the show, really. So we got a good show, again, lined up for you guys. I think we're going to open it up with the Rose Bowl. So let's jump right into that. Porter, you want to lead it off? And what did you see? What did you take away from that lack of defensive game?
Man, I just seen, this game along with, we can kind of couple in the Fiesta Bowl. I seen two different games where it looked like teams got out in front, looked like they had the game in control, and then like with Ohio State, something flipped. A switch flipped. C.J. Stroud just went off. I mean, he ended up just killing it. And they had two different receivers, had 3 touchdowns. He goes off for over 600 yards. I mean, they ended up breaking 8 Rose Bowl records in that game. And, yeah, you could say it was lack of defense, but I think if you get in a zone, when an offense gets in a zone, we look at the domination that LSU did the year before last, the domination that Alabama, and when you get in a zone and you just start picking apart defenses, you make that team in Utah look silly. But I think it was just, like I said, a flip switched, Ohio State come to play, and they come roaring back and ended up winning the game. And in the setting of the Rose Bowl, I mean, it's what they say, the granddaddy of them all. It proved that we had a lot of good games on the New Year's Day docket, and outside of the college football playoff games, semifinals, which we'll talk about later on. I mean, they really showed that. Outside of the college football playoffs, not all of these bowls are meaningless. They really come out to play, both teams, and Ohio State just come back and wanted it more.
That's true. I was very much screaming through the house at two teams that I'm not a big fan. I mean, obviously, Ohio State less than Utah, but I don't watch either team. And I was going through the house screaming after every big play of that Rose Bowl. I mean, it was electric. It was what the fans needed. Outside of, like you said, a college football semifinal, these bowls do matter, and I'm glad you said that, because it's true. To some of these kids, this is their last chance to not only impress the scouts, but to fulfill what they committed to their school for, to knock off that check mark, win a bowl, win a Rose Bowl, win a Fiesta Bowl. So it was good to see these guys compete and fulfill some dreams.
And I want to add, too, with how the college football playoff semifinals ended, everybody's quick to say, why do you want an expansion? Why wouldn't you? I mean, why not go to 8? Because now, like, say you have Ohio State and Oklahoma State win their games like they did in this dramatic fashion, and now they meet up. They link up in the next week to do another killer game. And I just think it just adds more value to what you're watching, and you're getting these New Year's 6 bowls that are still meaningless. So if you go outside of those top New Year's 6 bowl and then the semifinals, you have all those bowl games where it's going to mean something. The big payouts to all the colleges for showing up. I mean, I was very impressed on Ohio State and Oklahoma State for coming back. And again, you say meaningless games. They could have easily just waved the white flag. All right, hey, let's move on to next year. Let's just wave the flag. Let's give up. It wasn't our day, but they come roaring back and won the games. And I just think it was very good. And, of course, we're getting the matchup between Alabama and Georgia next week in the college football championship game. And I think that's going to be very intriguing. It's going to bring a lot of points to what I've been kind of preaching the past couple of weeks on my thoughts on it. And if Georgia comes out and just totally dominates Alabama in this championship game, I think I'm going to feel very validated on my points of what I think in getting the 2 SEC teams into that college football playoff. And we'll discuss that next week when those games come on.
And I feel you. I feel like that's I feel like you're correct in everything you've told me. On and off of here. That we have two SEC teams for a reason, and I'm hoping you're right because that means Georgia didn't really put in a lot of effort the first time, and we get a second go around at this. Tony, how you doing, man? You've been awful quiet. Jump in.
No, I'm sorry. I got really excited. I have one of my new my water bottles, and I'm actually putting like a bunch of college stickers on it currently, and like NFL
Nice.
stickers and whatnot.
Sweet.
But no, I definitely agree with you guys, and I think because I was thinking about this a little bit before the show started about, and like you said, we'll get into a little bit more in depth later. But I do think the college needs to do a playoff expansion because I mean you look at a team like Cincinnati that came in so hyped, and then they ended up getting shellacked for the most part because they hadn't faced a team like Alabama, but it, and I think they're going to implement bringing like expanding the playoffs even sooner because they're supposed to they're projected to expand it next year. I think not this season, but the following season they're supposed to expand it. I think they go ahead and do it now, to be honest with you, because you look at a game like the Rose Bowl and how exciting it was to see Ohio State versus drawing a blank. Huh?
Utah.
Yeah, and that was a phenomenal game. And that was a phenomenal game all the way down to the very end. And I think a lot of people would have been happier to see that pan out and see, Ohio State or whoever move forward in the playoffs at that and move deeper than probably the Alabama versus Cincinnati game, which a lot of us probably figured Alabama was still going to come out on top and win. Pretty much the same with the Georgia versus Michigan game. Everybody kind of figured, it was going to be Georgia because that defense was going to smother like we all kind of predicted they would. But no, I mean, I do agree too that these bowl games, they do matter to a point. I know the coaches typically aren't a big fan especially when you have, your established players like, okay, I'm not going to play in this game. You look at, say, Michigan State's like Kenneth Walker, or you look at Oregon's, Thibodeau. You look at, Michigan's, Hutchinson, Odebayo, or whatever 55's name is. I feel really bad that I can't remember it. Or Haskins, the running back. Any one of them could have declared for the draft and been like, yeah, we're not going to play. So you lose your star power there. But like you guys said, it does give these guys a chance that maybe haven't really had a chance to establish themselves throughout the season because you have guys like that in front of you and you're not going to get a whole lot of playing time. It gives them a chance like, hey, I did really well in this big bowl game that's on national television. I got to win, maybe consider drafting me probably in the later rounds, or maybe I'm one of these, like I'm a diamond in the rough type of kid. But I'd agree. I also really enjoyed the Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State. I thought that was a really good game. Notre Dame started out up in the half and then ended up actually losing it. Also kind of a personal validation because I finally get to prove that Jack Cohn is not a reliable quarterback. I said that when the dude was at Wisconsin for like 4 years. It's like, dude is terrible. Why did Notre Dame get this dude as a starting quarterback? But, it is what it is.
And what is it about a 28-7 lead that it's not safe? How many times have we seen 28-7 leads in the history of, these big games? You're up 28-7, you think you got it in the bag. And then, it started with, of course, the Falcons and the Patriots. And it's like now it's just started this jinx. So if I won't go for two, make it 29-7. That way you don't have that jinx of being up 28-7. But I want to make a point, too. In that CFP, I made the point last week on the show about playing Alabama in the semifinals. And other than Ohio State in 15, people's been getting crushed by Alabama. You're giving Nick Saban 30 days to really prepare for your team. And I've seen a tweet, and this is teams that have lost by 21 points or more in the semifinals. You got Florida State, Michigan State, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Clemson, Oregon, Alabama, and Ohio State. But they still belonged in the playoffs. I mean, there's not really – other than, if I'm not mistaken, the Georgia-Oklahoma game was really the only one, and the Clemson championship game where it was back and forth. But other than that, there's really not been that many close semifinal games. I remember the Georgia-Oklahoma game was just a shootout.
Nuts.
And that was – but other than that, even when Clemson was playing Notre Dame and when they – but when Clemson played Alabama in the semifinals, it was 24-6. It was kind of like the same thing what Alabama did to Cincinnati. And to Cincinnati's point, man, I think if they could have just got something going offensively, they had the chances to make that a game. And I think they just couldn't get the offensive clicking. And with a team like Alabama, they finally just kicked it in gear with their defense. And if Cincinnati could have taken care of some of those offensive drives in the first half, we would have been looking at a much closer score than what we seen in the second half, when Alabama's depth and their strength and the talent just overcame Cincinnati. And you cannot do that. Even in a championship game like next week we're going to see with Georgia, you can't give a team like Alabama that many chances, because they're just going to make a game that's competitive and turn it into a rout very quickly.
And I'll say this for the Cincinnati fans, don't be, don't disregard your team. Don't think they didn't play well. They played extremely well. People are going to see the stats and say, well, Brian Robinson ran for 200 yards. That was the game plan. The game plan was to not let Bryce Young carve them out. If they had played the run, this would have been, like I had predicted, 50-6. So, I mean, granted, they could have changed things up. They could have put more in the box, but that's exactly when Bryce Young would have ate them up. So I think offensively, their issues were playing scared. They didn't want to commit turnovers. They played in a shell the entire game. Had they moved the pocket and got Desmond Ridder some weapons on the edge that could make plays, I think you'd probably see them get in the 20s maybe, but they never even got to that point.
I tell you, the biggest key of that game was the fact that Alabama's defensive ends were getting their hands on the ball. If he could have got some of those passes off where they wasn't getting deflected, I kept on saying all game, one of these are going to get picked off. One of these are going to get picked off. And he just couldn't seem to get that ball out in the flat or hit them slants. I mean, so I guess in a way, I said that if they could have took care of some of those drives in the first half, but I mean, that he was just throwing it right into the defender's hands and they would jump up. And if he could have just pump fake, draw that guy off and then hit a slant, I mean, you would have been seeing some more first downs getting converted other than, they get the deflections. But man, I want to know, my biggest question was, what happened to Michigan? I mean, to have the dominant performance they had against Ohio State, come out and have that dominant performance against Iowa, and then just come out and it was almost like the first game between Georgia and Alabama. I mean, Georgia imposed their will, and then it shook Michigan, and they just could not recover. And I don't know. I just really thought that Michigan could win the game. I mean, I really thought that they could be as physical as Georgia was and come out, but I was proven wrong quick. I mean, it was like earlier in the season when Georgia played Arkansas, and it was 21-0 before you could even blink an eye, and you're like, man, this is just the game got out of hand that quick. And when you get up that much that early and you just keep putting your foot down, you can tell a true championship team like a Georgia or an Alabama, if they smell blood, they're going to keep their foot on your throat until it's mercy, because we've seen that against Michigan. And it was just crazy to see how you could go and do the performances like you did and then come out in the playoff and the semifinals and just lay an egg against Georgia the way they did.
Hey, Fran, that's my wife. Love you. Thanks for joining. I will say for Michigan, where they went wrong, and I really pegged them to go into the practices looking for a passing game. They stuck to their game plan, which is crazy to me. They wanted to run play action and run the ball. I don't remember them getting in an empty set one time. Not once. I saw 3 receivers almost the entire game. They tried to load the box and impose their will. And when it didn't work, they didn't switch anything up. All they did was brought in an extra tight end and still ran trips to one side, ran a screen. They didn't get outside the box. Hassan Haskins was not going to break 100 yards against Georgia's defense. I don't think anybody expected him to, but they didn't even really try to do something different. And when that failed, they switched quarterbacks, which I think should have been a more prevalent option earlier, because McNamara was not hitting his reads. I saw a couple times where there was a guy open, and he was just a little worried to get hit, and he pulled it down. So that's kind of what happened to Michigan. Their defense has bailed them out a lot this year, and playing behind, you always have a different mentality. No matter if it's 3 points, 7 points, you're always thinking a little differently. And I think they panicked way early. 14-zip is a reason to panic in a game like that, but I think the stage was also too big for them at this point in time.
Yeah, I'd agree. Because you kind of have to look at a lot of these divisional rivalries. Like you do any rivalry game. You look at when they beat a team like Ohio State. This is a team that they prepare for every single year. You only ever get one shot to face them. You get one shot to prove whether or not, hey, we're actually going to beat you or we're not. And I think for Michigan, they were so prepared to just beat Ohio State. And then after that, it's like, any game we win after that is, just kind of an extra added bonus. They're like, okay, well, we ended up winning the Big Ten, cool, but our big thing was we beat Ohio State. Like that for them was their college football win. And I kind of agree. You look at how Georgia came into that game, and Georgia kind of needed a rebound game if you think about it. They finish off, they got obliterated and humiliated by Alabama. Now I remember mentioning this to Chris, and I didn't get to hear Porter. I didn't get to hear your thoughts on it. I have a little bit of a conspiracy theory that I think Georgia went into that game of, hey, we're going to play, but we're not going to really show you what we can do because, if we knock you out of the playoffs because you're going to be a 2-loss team, then all Georgia would ever hear is, well, you guys didn't get a legitimate win because you didn't face Bama in the playoffs. And playoff Bama is a totally different beast as compared to, regular season Bama. And I think this was really kind of more of a rebound game for Georgia. It's one of those, once you either have a really bad loss or you have like a losing streak, you got to kind of be careful about that team that's on the other side because it's like, Georgia's on a bad losing streak. Georgia's going to come out mad and Georgia's going to come out hot of, hey, we're going to reestablish our dominance that we were the top seed pretty much all season for a reason.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I have, and here, it's dangerous for me because I'm in SEC country. Me saying anything anti-SEC or anything like that, I mean, I'm throwing myself to the fire, but I have it was just weird to me to see how Alabama struggled against Florida. They struggled against Arkansas. I mean, played them to 7 points. The way they played against Auburn, just how Auburn was able to get that pressure on Bryce Young and for them to, bail them out. If the running back, we forget, if that Auburn running back stays in bounds and does not run out of bounds, Alabama is not even in the college football playoffs.
Yeah.
So for that you need that kind of luck, not luck. I mean, it happens every year, so I wouldn't call it luck. It's just how it played out. But, to me, Georgia come in, and I made the point to Chris, you can't have a guy like Jordan Davis, All-American, the best defensive player in the nation, play 2 plays and then set out a series. You can't come in and play these games. So, yeah, it was almost like we know we're the number 1 seed. We can play and kind of sandbag this game because we're already locked in the college football playoffs. We know who we're probably going to be playing in Michigan because they're going to put Alabama at 1. They're going to play Cincy, and we're going to get Michigan. So they actually had more time to prep for. They knew who they were going to do because they wasn't going to run it back. They wasn't going to run back Alabama and Georgia. And they wasn't going to give Michigan the 1 seed, put Georgia and Alabama 2 and 3 to have them play in the semifinals right after they just got done playing.
Yeah.
So, outside the SEC, it's not a conspiracy theory, but inside the SEC, it is a conspiracy theory because how dare you say anything negative about the almighty SEC, which they produce. They put more in the NFL. They've won all their national titles, but it's still, to me, they're the moneymaker. What do you want to see? Do you want to see Georgia and Alabama and 2 other teams? Or what would you – so say Alabama doesn't get in and Baylor sneaks in or Oklahoma State sneaks in. So you're going to have Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. That might not get that much draw. So they're looking at a business point. And we're coming off a COVID year where we're going to do as much as we can to get money back into and start generating revenue. So, guys, we can sit here and act like we're salty against the SEC all we want, but in the grand scheme of it, it's a business. It's entertainment. That's what we need to remember, and I think that's where it's very important, where I stand on these players getting paid. When the NCAA made it a business and entertainment, I fully believe that every college football player should get their name, image, and likeness money because it's a business. You're getting coaches getting $10 to $12 million a year from what your players are doing. I've said it before, Jimbo Fisher, he got $75 million guaranteed at Texas A&M because of him winning a national championship with Jameis Winston. Dabo Swinney's getting 9 million a year because he had the luxury of having Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. You know, you just look at all these people. I mean, other than Nick Saban, because Nick Saban has proved that he's the greatest coach of all time, and you could put him in the greatest coach of all time in any sport. I mean, up there, when you put a Mount Rushmore of coaches of all sports, college, pro, he's got to be up there because of what he's clearly done in his dominance in the toughest conference in the country.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, especially because and a lot of people forget too, because I have to remind a lot of my younger Alabama fans, he actually helped LSU win one of their first national titles as well. And then he's like, all right, now I'm going to go do it at Alabama. So, I mean, he's one of the few head coaches as well that's won multiple national championships with, different schools. I know one of the only few other ones is Urban Meyer, and I can't think of really any other big name college coaches that can say that they did that at two different programs off the top of my head. Anyway, there's probably others, but those are the two big ones that have had sustained success at two different programs for a significant length of time.
I don't put Urban Meyer in a good group of coaches, so I'll skip on talking about him.
True, not at least from the NFL standard. The NFL standard, he flamed out. But I mean, realistically, if you think about it, Nick Saban flamed out in the NFL too. Yeah. The last time he was a part of a successful NFL team, ironically enough, he was the defensive coordinator, and Bill Belichick was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns back in 1995.
Yep.
And then he went to Miami and didn't get Drew Brees and fizzled out.
Yeah, and I think really outside of Pete Carroll, what other coach? I mean, in modern, when we say modern history, I mean, we're looking at recent past 20 years. What coach from the college ranks has went to the NFL and had a lot of success? And Pete Carroll's the only one that I can think of that did. So you're looking at all these coaches who went from college to the pros, and a lot of them's either come back or you're looking at Rule. Look what Rule did at Baylor. Mm-hmm. He lasted a year. He's out, and you just look at everybody. I mean, Urban Meyer come back, and God bless Jacksonville's souls. I mean, it's just, you knew that was a disaster waiting to happen. We knew that was not going to pan out. And we just knew that space is not there. You can't. Every time Turner will come his way, he automatically got some kind of medical condition. It's just how it is. And it's just, I mean, go ahead.
And I'll say this because I follow NFL. I follow NFL, I'd say, a little bit more than I do college. Even having watched Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence, as they were coming up throughout the college years, I felt like I was most excited for Jacksonville because you really think that was kind of Urban Meyer's like perfect place to establish himself for being in the NFL. You're going to a team that doesn't have a lot of star power, so you have a ton of salary cap. You have a lot of guys that you can go out, you can draft. You have a high draft capital. You have 2 first-round picks last year. You got, the number 1 pick, so you have what we think is a generational talent quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who's from college. You're a college coach coming into the NFL. You have all of the pieces there to potentially be really successful and really prove, hey, I can transfer what I've learned from college. I can take the college system and implement it here in the NFL. I think, like you guys said, with the turmoil, because it's Urban Meyer. I feel like Urban Meyer kind of likes the drama a little bit because you look at that Florida Gators team, like half of them ended up getting arrested. I feel like he secretly kind of likes the drama. And then you look at his hiring process that he did in Jacksonville. He picked really a bunch of failed coordinators. Mm-hmm. Like your best guy is your offensive coordinator that you got from Detroit, who was the interim head coach when Matt Patricia got fired.
Yeah.
Like how much success are you?
Well, and that followed him back to Ohio State. He was making some questionable hires at Ohio State too. I mean, if you look at some of the coaches, all the controversy that was going on there, I mean, it just seems like it's followed him wherever he goes. And he had the success, but look who he had at Florida. You had a generational talent in Tebow, one of the greatest college football players of all time, sit there and score 50 touchdowns running and throwing, so, I mean, it's just how that all plays out. And he did have a lot of good talent there with, Leak and Hernandez and all those guys, so.
And you had Cam Newton on that roster too at one point. And he ended up transferring to Auburn because he knew he wasn't going to beat out Tim Tebow.
Yep. So, I mean, that's the thing. We look at things that are legal now, NIL, and we're looking at the transfer portal. I mean, this has been going on for years. It's just you used to have to sit out a year. And back then, you sat out and they brought you in because they knew they had a quarterback that was established. He was going to be gone after the year, and you're basically his understudy for a year, and then you come out and ball out. But I think we're really seeing the gap between college. Yes, you can do the college game emulate it like the NFL, or you can run it as a business like the NFL, but the talent's still there. Mm-hmm. When you get to the NFL, everybody's an NFL player. The guys on the practice squad, you put practice squad players and then go play a college football team, you're going to beat them because these are all Americans. You might have one All-American on your defense if you're lucky. And you can sit there if you're an NFL type quarterback or a running back or a defender, you're going against, look at the Alabama and the talent in Alabama and Cincinnati. The depth, when that kicks in, you can see just teams pound away and just really separate themselves. And that's why it's so hard. And plus, you're dealing with kids and recruiting. When you get to the NFL, you're dealing with grown men who are making more than you. Yeah. If they don't like what's going on, they have a voice, they have a union, they have an agent, so it's just crazy that a lot of what I see, but I do blame it on these NFL executives. They're giving these quarterbacks $20 million a year. They're giving these kids coming into, and they're coming into the worst programs. You look at Mac Jones. He's sitting up there at the Patriots. They're established. They have a program, and he's the one that's doing the best out of all these teams because look at the talent and the coach that's around him. He's not going to a Jacksonville or a Cleveland or a Cincinnati. Now, Joe Burrow, I mean, he's starting to come into his own because, I mean, he's in year 2, and the fact that he's established, and they've built talent around him. You can't keep giving these quarterbacks your top salary cap money and you don't have anything to build around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's been what a lot of guys have kind of emphasized, that's really your best opportunity to win a Super Bowl is when you're paying your quarterback like dirt money. When you have these rookie guys that come in, you don't have to pay them anything. So yeah, really all you have to worry about is just putting talent around them. I'll kind of say too, at least for Joe Burrow, and I would say this for really a lot of the college programs, I would say consistency is a big thing because you look at a lot of these NFL teams. A lot of these NFL teams, like you said, is a business. They either get a lot of money or they lose a lot of money, and so a lot of times they're impatient. You look at Jacksonville, and Chris can attest to this, more than I can. How many coaches would you say you've gone through in the last 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Put the word "good" behind that because I don't think we've had a single good coach other than Jack Del Rio.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the.
Yeah. And that's where you're going with the patience things because people don't realize it takes 3-4 years to really build a program to where, I mean, you could drop that down to the college ranks. Look at Dabo and Clemson. It took him 7 years of keeping his staff together and Venables and Elliott and Scott to where they get the recruiting. You get 3-4 years of good recruiting classes and you finally go out and win a national championship, over Alabama. But it took 7 years to get there. You're getting these coaches that you have to build a culture. Bring up Arkansas for a second and Sam Pittman and what he's done at Arkansas. This is a guy that he's built a culture at a school where that's the only program in the state. Like when it comes to Arkansas, that's their pro team. That's everything. And the AD there at Arkansas, Hunter Yurachek, from top to bottom, from his football program all the way down to the soccer program, they won 9 SEC titles last year, but all these coaches are built together. They have a text chain where they're communicating together. And when you have your AD showing up to the volleyball games and the soccer games and the softball games, that starts to grow. And you're seeing it with Sam Pittman year 2 going 9-4 and the strongest schedule and wins 9. And he was a 2-point conversion away from going 10-3. That just tells you what's going on at teams like that. But I said again last week, that's where the transfer portal and these kids come in, and you can snag a couple of guys who could Felipe Franks, and you're letting KJ Jefferson build up into the quarterback that he is now. He is so much better this year. Poised in the pocket, and you can see the growth from earlier in the season. And he went, let's see, halftime heave against Ole Miss, I believe, threw an interception, and then he went all until the bowl game and his second pass and threw an interception. I mean, just the significance. You said consistency. You want to keep Browse and Odom. You want to keep these people. But it's crazy because you look at the top programs in Alabama and Georgia. They're having all that success and there's no consistency at all. They're losing their OCs and DCs every year because they're snagging them and taking them to other programs because of Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. But again, how many of those coaches have kind of went out and had a lot of success? I mean, it took Jimbo beating Saban. That was the first guy that could beat him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you got to think too, like, you know, when you've established yourself like Nick Saban has, you know, you've established the name, you've established the program with that consistency, and then you get those recruits to come there. Really, at that point, you have all the talent there. That's why we've seen somebody, you know, like Steve Sarkisian. You know, if you look at last year, you know, Steve Sarkisian was like the greatest offensive coordinator, you know, flipping ever because of, you know, Mac Jones and, you know, all the talent that he had. And now he went to Texas and he was just average. He wasn't good. And then, you know, now you look at Alabama again. Who did they hire as their offensive coordinator? They had Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
Bill O'Brien looks like a great coach again. And it's like, So, I mean,
we all know what's behind the curtain. That's at Alabama, it's Saban's way. I mean, we all know, you know, and I think they accept that. When you go to his school, you're going there to win a national championship, but you're going to do it his way. And he's put his foot down on that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you have to think about it too. That's part of that tenured success, though. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
Well, you're good. You're good. I was just going to circle back around to y'all talking about college coaches that go to the NFL. I think the biggest reason that it does not work, and I'll say it this way, team building coaches, and you've got like Urban Meyer, who is great at recruiting. He can put a team together. And you've got the Cliff Kingsburys, who bring a system. They have a way they want to play football. The difference is Cliff Kingsbury can build a team by what he needs for his system. Urban Meyer doesn't have a system. He just wants to play football a certain way. So Urban Meyer goes to the NFL. Like you said, it's not recruiting. That's not a thing. And Saban ran into this problem at Miami. You don't go out, you don't visit these guys' houses and say, hey, I want you to come to Miami or I want you to come to wherever. That's not a thing in the NFL. They want to see dollars. And so team builders from college do not make great coaches in the NFL. And so I kind of figured, you know, as soon as I heard Urban Meyer, I was like, because I'm a Jags fan, that's when I stopped caring about the NFL right there, because that's the only team I really go for. And I knew that was going to be a train wreck. And it lasted less than a full season. So it kind of shows you the guy's not really a good coach. I mean, he's got his all, you know, motives and reasons for wanting to coach, but I don't think any of them are that great.
No, I would disagree. He is a good coach. He is a good coach. Just like we can say Antonio Brown's a good wide receiver. But when you lose it, not saying he's lost it, I'm just saying when you lose your edge, when something clicks, and this could, I mean, our guy at Sports and Culture, Tyler Butler, brought up, you know, a play where Antonio Brown got hit in the Pittsburgh game, and he just never was the same when he played for Pittsburgh. You get to a point to where you get to be bigger than who you really are, and you just think you're above everything. And I think that's what the difference between Nick Saban and all the other coaches. Yes, Nick Saban is, if you want to make that excuse, he's the biggest one. But I think he still knows I've got to keep everything straight because it can be gone like that. Yeah. And with Urban Meyer, I just think something happened and he just never recovered from it. I mean, you take his personal life away from the coaching. He was a good coach. I will not say he's a great coach. He was a good coach, had a lot of good talent. But you can't say because of what happened in his personal life, he is not still good, because he's got national championships to prove that he was a good coach. He done it at Utah. But good person? Oh, no, I won't even touch that. But I'm saying we can't disregard what he has done in the realm of college sports, you know.
Well, and I'll say this. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, I feel like I can't argue with you because he went to Florida when Florida was down, but anytime you get even a decent coach at Florida, they have a chance at making it because of their name. He did the same thing at Ohio State. That's a name. Put him in a school like Tennessee. Does he have a chance? No, because he's not that great of a coach. There's levels of greatness, And if you want to consider him great, put him at a school that doesn't have that one thing away from being great. He stepped into that situation at Florida. He got Tim Tebow. Things started clicking. He goes to Ohio State. He gets who was his first big quarterback? That was Cardale Jones, really?
Yeah,
Jones,
Cordell
and there was
Jones,
Barrett,
Barrett,
JT Barrett, and then
So, I mean,
Haskins.
there was another one before that. Really,
Yeah.
oh god, I'm trying to think of
Braxton
his
Miller.
name. Yes, that
Yeah.
was him. That
Mhm.
was the one. That was when they played Clemson that first time, and they gave him his first shutout. But I mean, it was just Braxton Miller, this and that. But yeah, he's had a lot of talent, but you still got to get them to produce. I mean, we've seen. Look at LSU. Look at Texas A&M. You get all the talent in the world, and look what happens. But y'all still went to the. Y'all still produce. Y'all have not flamed out. You know, you've not. Your nemesis is Alabama. And you might lose, like when y'all lose to South Carolina, but you're looking at 1 or 2 losses compared to look what happened to Ed Ogeron when he lost his coordinators in that all-world team. He's out. That's not a good coach. If you can't bring in somebody else and do the same thing. Jimbo Fisher is bringing in talent left and right, and they're going 8-4, 9-3. You know, if you have all that talent around you, you should be. Yes, he beat Alabama this year, but again, then he turns around and loses to LSU in Ed O's last game. I mean, it's just confusing. You know, it doesn't make any sense. So that's what separates good coaches from great coaches.
Yeah, and to kind of like what Chris said, you know, and I think that's a lot of times why you have to look at why college coaches don't typically pan out in the NFL is you have to look at where they're going into. You know, what are typically the most teams that have coaching vacancies about every 3 to 4 years? Detroit, always a mess. You have nothing really to go off of. You have nothing to build. Jacksonville, always a mess. You have nothing to go off of. You have nothing to build, except for like 2017. You know, New York Jets, you have nothing to go off of. The Giants, and maybe.
But look at all these teams, and they keep on drafting quarterbacks to solve their problems, and they keep on trading for quarterbacks to solve their problems, and they're not building an offensive line or a defense. Look at, even look at Kansas City. I mean, they gave all that money to Mahomes, and now look at they don't have a defense, and they're either coming out and scoring 50 or they're getting blown out. It's just it's a balance, but I think a lot of it is with the personality of a college head coach, and they're in control. You go to the NFL, you're not in control. You're like a baseball manager. Yeah, you could be a good head coach, but again, like I said a couple minutes ago, you're playing against men who are making more money than you. You're playing against grown men that you don't have a control. If they want to not sit out and they want to not have their game check, they're going to sit out. They're going to sit out the rest of the season, So, and that's what Anthony Price just said. College coaches have the control who comes and goes. NFL, you don't have that power. I mean, you got guys that are locked into contracts, and they can. And just look at the pro. A guy can be sitting there not producing, and he's in his contract. He's up for a renewal. Guess what? He's going to ball out to get more money. So, it's just you don't have that control like you do in college, like you do in NFL.
Yeah, and like I said, I think a lot of times it just kind of depends on too. If you're a college head coach coming in, who do you have to work with? Look at Cliff. He got to bring in a quarterback that he specifically wanted. He looked at Josh Rosen and said, absolutely not. So I think a lot of times too that kind of comes into the factor as well. Look at Matt Rule. Matt Rule has never really had a quarterback that he particularly wants. Luckily they got Sam Darnold on a super, super cheap, exchange. And they didn't have to pay him a crap ton of money. But, I think that's a lot of it too, is the whole patience thing. These guys don't really get a chance to come in. They don't really get a chance to bring in the players that they want to bring in and kind of build something, because a lot of teams are impatient. I think, all honesty, if I was a college coach and I was looking for an NFL job, you want to know what probably one of the few places I would go to like immediately is Chicago, because you have a young, good quarterback that was successful in college, has a year now under his belt. You have a little bit to work with there. You have an owner. Hopefully you're not going to have a GM there that's still going to be there. But you have things to work around. Whereas, if you go to Detroit, you're not going to have anything to work with. You're not going to always have a consistent GM. Even Cleveland, you're not going to have anything consistent there. You have talent now. You have talent in Cleveland, but for how long? But yeah, I do agree. I think a lot of it is because they're not gonna give coaches a lot of power in the NFL because again, it's a business and you got to think about it. There's only really been 2 times we've seen coaches have a lot of pull and power here in the last 20 years, and it's either goes really, really well or it doesn't. And that's
Yep.
Bill Belichick and the Patriots. It goes really well, even though he sucks at drafting wide receivers and tight ends. Um, and then you got Bill O'Brien, who's like, you know what I'm going to trade DeAndre Hopkins for? A bag of peanuts and like a dime. Like, that's all I'm trading for. So, yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy. So some other news today. This one, I'll give absolute props to Tyler Butler on this. If you go back in our sports and culture thread, when Lincoln Riley announced he was going to USC, Tyler said Caleb Williams follows him. And I think that's what we're going to see. He entered the portal today. Some reports are saying he might return. I don't think you join the portal to look at just options at that level. I mean, he's literally at the level of he could probably start for most teams. So I really think he goes to USC, and I think Tyler's correct on that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where he goes. I mean, but it all depends on, is Lincoln Riley really a proven head coach? I mean, he took over the talent, from Stoops. And you look at the Baker Mayfields, you look at Kyler Murray's, and you had Jalen Hurts, and they kind of slipped off a little bit, but because you had Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams, and you end up not. I mean, it would have been crazy if they'd slipped into the college football playoffs, them and Notre Dame, with their coaching changes and stuff. But I think I don't know if he wants to stay in the SEC, or go to the SEC. We'll see. I mean, like I was telling you earlier, there's reports saying he might go to Georgia or Ohio State. That's the 2 leading candidates, but I think that's the hot flash in the pan name, so everybody's going to link them to those programs. If he goes to USC, it wouldn't be a surprise because Lincoln Riley is there, but I wouldn't be surprised if look at Georgia's situation. I mean, yeah, you have JT Daniels, but you don't know. And if you got a guy like Caleb Williams, I would take him over JT Daniels. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. And now you're talking about Georgia this year. If they win a national championship and you're losing your talent and stuff, why not replace him with somebody like Caleb Williams to come in and really cement and stay up there with Saban?
Yeah. I mean,
I would almost say.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say, I don't know that Kirby takes him. And I say this because he has 5-star Vandegrift sitting on the bench. He's got 4-star Gunnar Stockton coming in. And if you take Caleb Williams, you may lose one or both of those guys. But more importantly, you may lose any ties you have to Arch Manning in 2023. Because that's the ultimate goal. That's the sweepstakes. So I don't think they take him. I don't even think he's at conversation.
Yeah.
No, the only way I'll say anything about the Arch thing is he's 2023. They can bring Caleb Williams in for a year, and then you got Arch to follow him, or even a year after that. I mean, so you still got a ways to go. And I don't know who's going to end up getting Arch. You'll be honest with you, it's going to be whoever throws him the most money. I mean, let's be real. There's going to be somebody that comes in, and it's going to be where he's going to get the biggest deals. But with his ties to the Mannings, he might have outside deals, and he might end up going to Tennessee or Ole Miss. You never know where he's going to go.
Yeah, but I think for Arch too, I think he's going to kind of do what Peyton and Eli both did. They kind of went to different schools than what Dad went to. They went to different schools than each other to kind of establish themselves because obviously, Eli was always following in Peyton's shoes. Peyton was always following in Dad's shoes. And I think Arch is going to kind of do the same thing. So I honestly think, because wasn't it LSU, Texas, Georgia, obviously Ole Miss is in there. I think Tennessee was in there. It was
Clemson's
Alabama
after him too.
And Clemson. Okay.
Yeah.
Was Alabama in there for him?
I don't think I've seen any reports. I mean, they might be, but I'm talking the people that are after him hard. I mean, of course, when you go to Ole Miss and they paint the end zones Manning, I mean, and It was about Eli Manning Day.
Oh, of course.
Really?
Of course. But no, I mean, if I'm Caleb, that's what I would look at too, and if I was Caleb, I would just ask straight up, hey, if I hypothetically say he goes to Georgia, I'd be like, hey, what's my future going to look like depending on what we do this year? Like with the exception of me winning a national championship for you guys, completely, maybe not completely astronomical, but pretty far out there. What's my future here? And I think for him, really the only two choices are stay at Oklahoma, kind of reestablish yourself. You're in a system that you're going to know, you're familiar with the players, or go to USC. Because to be honest with you, Lincoln Riley never really came out and said, yeah, Caleb's the guy. So, I mean, is that completely on Caleb? Is that a Lincoln thing? Kind of what is that? And same really with Lincoln Riley, because he has that number 1 5-star prospect out of California that's supposed to be going there as well. Is it next year?
Yep, this season coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, more than likely he's going to be like, yeah, I may just go ahead and start the kid and just work with him for 4 years and give him a chance, and you're just kind of be my backup again. So, to me, I think he should stay out of the SEC. I don't think he really wants to go there. I think that's part of why he's leaving Oklahoma. Like I said, Georgia may not be a good long-term thing because they're going to be in the Arch sweepstakes, and they may just go ahead and kick him to the curb. So if I was him, I would say go to a Big Ten school. I mean, Michigan needs a quarterback. Clemson needs a quarterback. You could go to Michigan. You could even go to Iowa. I mean, Iowa wouldn't be bad because you have a very good coach there. You have a very good offensive line. You have a good defense. It's one of those Iowa, you're not really going to come in with a lot of expectations. You could go to Wisconsin. I mean, you have a lot of, I would say, really decent teams that you could go to, and you wouldn't necessarily have to be in the SEC, and you could still be competing for a national championship and still be competing at the highest level. But yeah, if I was him, I would kind of stay out of it because you had a rough year last year with trying to replace Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler kind of went to the bottom of the SEC, and that's not going to pan out well for him being in South Carolina. But we'll see. But yeah,
I'll put Texas in there too. That's a good spot. Sarkisian, he can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I would agree. And what better way? And I don't think he has anything against Oklahoma specifically. I think if he was to ever have anything against anybody, it might be Lincoln. But again, it's not one of those like he kind of got screwed royally from Lincoln Riley. So I don't know if there'd be a lot of animosity there. But yeah, Texas very much so. Now he would have all of Sooner Nation hating him, but is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I think we've accomplished the goal this evening. So next Monday, same time, we're going to use Loose Lugs as a pregame show for the national championship. So make sure you guys tune in. Hopefully we have the same guys here. That's going to be great. We'll have a +1 next Monday. So I'm looking forward to it. Do your homework. I'm going to do mine. I'm going right now to go watch that terrible Alabama-Georgia game from the SEC title, and I will have predictions.
All right, sounds good.
All righty, y'all.
And
Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces.